Sorry about that. Had to unmute myself. This is Real Talk live streaming. This is John Rawlings. I am actually on with a really good friend. I have to say that I learned a lot about Mike through some hurricane events that we went through. Learned about his professionalism and how he handles himself. And I can't wait to have this conversation because I truly value our friendship. But Mike, I'm going to let you take the ball and run with it for a few minutes and introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. I appreciate being on with you too, and I really appreciate being on with you when we're not activated in our EOC again.
Absolutely.
Definitely, definitely a little bit of a different cadence. So my name is Mike Navarez. I'm the Deputy Emergency Manager for the City of Northport. And essentially what we do in emergency management is disaster preparedness, response, recovery, mitigation. So we do a lot of coordination for all of the needs both during a storm, when we have a disaster facing the city, or in the prep time leading up to or afterwards.
And so I've got Stacy's information run across the bottom. Kind of give her role and what she does there too, and how that associates with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the Deputy Emergency Manager. Stacy Alosio is our emergency manager for the city. We are a team of three. We also have AJ Brown, who is our planning coordinator. So AJ deals specifically with developing and maintaining our emergency plans, like the comprehensive emergency management plan, our continuity of operations plan. Stacy specifically, she leads the team, but three of us work together very closely. So whether it's day-to-day blue skies when we're developing those plans, leading trainings, exercising with the team, or if we're in that disaster response, EOC management. Stacy and I both serve in the role of EOC manager, where we operate and lead that emergency operations center room. She does it day shift or A shift, and then I do B shift or overnight.
And there's quite the relationship that's been built and continuing to be built with Sarasota County and above. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of that and how that structure has really fortified our emergency responses and how you guys have dealt with a lot of things that way?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of what we do in the field of emergency management, it starts with relationship building, and the county is a really good example of that. So if you look at the framework for how emergencies are managed in Florida specifically, but really nationwide, it starts local first, but there's definitely a very clear pathway where requests for assistance and aid go from the city up to the county and then the county up to the state. So we work really day to day to cultivate that relationship with Sarasota County. So not just do we know who it is we're working with up there, but we build that level of trust. So if we do have an activation event, Debbie, Helene, and Milton being the most recent example of that, but Ian also very much, or even some of the fires we had recently, we get very much on the phone with Sarasota County if we need to elevate a request to the state, or if there's a resource that we can't get locally here in the city, we funnel that request up to the county, and they have kind of a greater economy of scale, so they might be able to coordinate a resource that we can't, or they're the conduit to the state. So if we need to elevate something to the state of Florida, we go through the county. But we lay the groundwork for that now so that in a disaster, we're not picking up the phone trying to figure out who we need to call and doing an introduction during an actual disaster. So laying that foundation now and having that relationship built is huge.
What I find to be amazing is we're talking about it as if it never happens, but it did. We actually had that event. North County had no clue on what was happening here, and if it wasn't for our great resources here on the ground, like you and Stacy and the crew, there's a lot to be said about what you guys did for the community and for every citizen here. Can you? I really want you to dive into that for a minute because I think that is the most valuable piece that we can discuss today, is because that happened. That was a real, alive event that took place. And the citizens need to understand the value that you guys brought to our community and made North County actually understand what was happening.
So it comes down to advocacy, I think is the best way to describe that. Being down here in the city, we know best what the needs are in our city. We understand the threats that are unique to Northport specifically, the areas of interest, hazards, vulnerability, but also our resource needs, our capabilities, our gaps. Milton and Helene were really good examples of that. We were being very forward leaning when we were planning for, especially Milton. Milton, until it hit that wind shear and broke down, we were looking at a very significant impact to the city of Northport. At one point in time, on the phone with the Weather Service and the Hurricane Center, they were saying that this was gearing up to be significantly worse than Ian was for our area. And we got, I want to say, very lucky that the wind shear happened there and it broke down that storm significantly. So we did not see the colossal impacts that we were expecting with that storm. But we were being very forward leaning with resources. We were coordinating very closely with the county and the state. We were pre-positioning search and rescue teams. We were pre-positioning resources to bring them in as quickly as possible after landfall so that we can get things staged and present in the community. That very much is through advocating for those resources for our city, for our residents, and making sure that we have things staged, ready, and available so that we can pull the trigger immediately afterwards.
You know, there's a value to talking about the EOC when it comes to the hurricanes, and we're in that season now. So preparedness is paramount for everybody to pay attention to. And we've had the event already this year. We have not stopped talking about it, but by the way, because it's on the tip of everybody's tongue just because we've gone through these events. But can you talk about you brought up fires. How does that relate to our EOC? Some of these things, we've got the drought, we've got fires, you know, we got wildlife that kind of encompasses that whole tragedy that could be on our horizon. Can you talk about how that collectively gets addressed through our EOC?
Yeah, 100%. I think that in Florida, sometimes we put our hurricane blinders on sometimes, and we think emergency management, we think hazards, we think hurricanes instantly, and sometimes forget that that is very much not our only hazard. And this season has been a really good showcase of that, where it's been I'm going to say, quote unquote, below average hurricane season. And I really want to come back to that. But it's been in a very severe fire season where we've had a lot of less rain, higher degree of drought, and higher the KBDI, our drought index. So we have had some significant fires that were responded to, and how that kind of works. So Northport Fire Rescue takes the lead for fire specifically. The EOC, we stand that up. It's a coordination framework. So we bring all of our partners to the table. If it's a fire, Northport Fire Rescue's taking the lead on the scene by the fire. They're sending requests up to us in our EOC, our Emergency Operations Center. So we are supporting them offsite. And it's anything from we need to bring in additional teams. So we're coordinating through the county, through other government agencies on what available responders in the area, who can we bring in to support Northport Fire Rescue. We might be supporting them with resources. We might not just be teams. It could be physical resources. It could be food. It could be some aftercare for the firefighters that are getting out of the heat, someplace cool that they can just go to take a break for a second. So there's some offsite resource support. Could be public information too, if we're evacuating areas, if we're sending information out to the public on avoid this area, or the reason you're seeing smoke in the air is because of a fire that's burning here. There's no structures that are threatened in the area, or if there's areas that could become threatened, it's that degree of public information too. Working very closely, we bring in anybody to the EOC that needs to be involved and have a seat at the table. So if it's communications to do some of that public messaging, if we're bringing in police or parks and recreation, because we might need to do evacuations, traffic management, we might need to set up a shelter if we are evacuating people from their homes and they have nowhere to go. We might stage them at one of our rec centers. What we do is we bring in the players into the EOC, and that becomes essentially that coordination structure of who needs to be involved, how are they working together, how are we facilitating all of that.
Well, and I'm going to draw it all back to the new EOC, because City Hall was our EOC and currently still is until the new one is built. So the citizens, again, need to understand that's a dual rule for that building. If that EOC is in action, in combination with the city, if it's not a hurricane where everything is kind of not on hold, how does that work within like a fire situation that you may have to go through. How do you work within the walls of City Hall to structure that so that continuing daily work happens?
Right. So we first and foremost, we identify a space. It's typically a larger conference room that we have in City Hall. We set that up as the EOC. That's that one room where we bring in all of our liaisons and have everybody together. And then we really need to take over the parts of City Hall that are going to meet the need. If we were to stand up a call center or a hotline that our residents can call in and find information about what's going on, we might need to expand the footprint of what our EOC is capable of. If we go into 24-hour operations, if the fire, for instance, is not diminishing overnight and we need to continue to support our fire rescue on site and keep the EOC activated overnight, now we're finding areas within City Hall that we might need to sleep people because we need to have 2 shifts in there so that we can have people working constantly. City Hall is not meant for 24-hour operations. It's also meant for a lot of different other departments that are doing day-to-day work. So we have permitting still going on in here. We have the tax collector's office and property appraiser that are still located in the building. We have commission. If there was a meeting going on, we still need to facilitate as many government services as possible while also having a dedicated space for disaster response and coordination set up. And the building it's both not meant for that. So you say dual purpose. We are making it work, but it's definitely not designed for it. It's also not resilient enough that if we need to have people in here, and hurricanes are the best example of this because it pretty much impacts the entire city and it's a higher wind speed than what the building's rated for. It's very difficult. We typically have to move people off of the 3rd floor just in the event that there's structural issues with the roof. So we need to keep people safe in this building as well. And that's why the EOC is happening, because it is a firmer, more resilient building that's designed for that 24-hour operations. It has showers in the EOC. We don't have showers here. So if we're working for days to weeks in a row, I'm telling all of my responders very much, you need to bring deodorant in at the least, because we don't really have the time to stop and take a break, and we don't have the facilities to accommodate that. There's a generator on the building now that wasn't there in Ian, but there still doesn't have backup water supply to the building too, which very much Ian showed us is another failure. And the EOC again is going to have everything it needs to be resilient and keep operations going.
I'm super excited about it. I from the position I get to be in, a lot of times, I'm blessed to have seen what you guys do behind the scenes, and the utmost respect to all of the people who work within that EOC in that situation. I was gracious when I said the building is a dual rule. It is not. It is happening that way, but we are, as citizens, we need to be more alert on what is happening with our emergency management team, because I got to tell you, I have never seen a group of people switch gears and switch roles. And I don't think that people really truly understand how the role playing switches in emergency events like that. Chief Titus was in the room on the live streaming when that storm, and he got up and left and came back and said, it turned. So Chief Titus was in the room on a discussion when that storm was coming our direction. And Chief Titus was not in control of the room. Stacy was, and you and your team. So can you really give a good in-depth overview of what happens, and so that citizens that are new to our community can understand what happens in an emergency event like that?
Yeah, thank you. I think that it's something that we definitely want to highlight, because the EOC is not the most easy thing to see or to know what it does. If you have a disaster, if you're going through that, the faces that you're going to see in those difficult times are going to be those first responders in the field, the non-governmental organizations like the Red Cross that are out there, and being, doing the good work, and they are very important partners to all of that. We work in typically a windowless building where we are coordinating behind the scenes, and it's a large room full of people from every discipline together, making sure that everybody's talking to one another, that we're forward leaning in what we're doing, and we're taking the brunt off of our first responders so that they can do what they do best. So that fire rescue can go out there and save lives, and police can go out there and save lives. Public works utilities can get the infrastructure restored. We, in the EOC, we do the planning element. We know not just what we're doing now, but what's coming next, making sure that the in the field responders have all the gear, all the team, all the people that they need now and coming up, so that they suddenly don't find that all of their people need to go off shift and they don't have any backfill coming in. We make sure that we're addressing those strategic high points, and that all of the different departments and all of the different functions are all working together well, so that there's less coordination that has to be done at that field level, and they can focus on being in the field and saving lives.
Well, and I want to take it one step further, because you're not highlighting it the way I think you should. How about that?
Okay.
Because as a citizen, what I saw, I was amazed, because you're not just preparing for the moment, you're preparing down the road. So the for example, water, food, supplies, those are all things that you guys, when we knew we were going to get hit, everything kind of spun, and it wasn't spinning out of control. It was a machine that was running, that we knew where resources were, how we were going to govern that. And we jumped right in there and started working that system. So there are systems in play for communities that get hit directly. And I want you to educate them on that, because I think that's the next step in what you were saying, is that, yeah, we have the home base covered, but here's what we're doing for you if we do get hit.
Yeah, I think when I say resources, I'm not really making clear really what that means. And it means that we're providing everything from making sure that the National Guard is there set up for those points of distribution. So when the food and water gets distributed out, and we used partnership with San Pedro Church, that is there online. So if those grocery stores are closed, if we don't have any place to go because power is offline on our entire city, that we have food and water being provided to our residents, that we're basically going and working with the Red Cross, we're working with Salvation Army, all of those different nonprofits that inevitably they're going to come into our community and they're going to do the good work, but they don't know where to go. They don't know what areas are impacted. And it goes through the EOC that, hey, Northport Estates was hit particularly hard by this event, and we need to set up something close so that we get food and water to our folks in there. Northport Fire Rescue is doing search and rescue, but high level, it's coming from the EOC, where it is, or where the hardest hit areas are, and how do we prioritize which areas are swept through, because our entire city is impacted. So we need to know not just which areas are impacted and what the severity is across our entire city, because if everything's a priority, then we're kind of in deadlock. So there's so many different resources. We've coordinated everything from flying in Army National Guard resources and Humvees into the area, to food and water set up, the community bathroom sites that are set up when our residents don't have power or water, and those on well don't have flushing toilets. So it is across the board, public facing resources, community sites, shelters, feeding. We use a system called lifelines, which are the different steps of what does our community need and how are they impacted, and how can we prioritize getting people the basic human needs they need for survival.
You know, and one thing that you said, and I gave the fist pump, is nonprofits, because our nonprofits don't get nearly enough credit for what they do annually in our community, because they take the pressure off of City Hall a lot, by the services they provide. And that's the foundation of a great city, is having a good resource center for social services, because there's a huge need, and in times of disasters, those nonprofit organizations truly do step up.
Yes, 100%. There is something actually called VOAD, the Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster, and COAD, Community Organizations Active in Disaster. And both of those mechanisms are incredibly important. There are community organizations. They're the ones that are here day to day. That's our Red Cross, our Salvation Army, local chapters, our United Way, our Kiwanis that are already here, and they ramp up and they do the work during a disaster. They basically put on a different hat and they get started in the community. Those voluntary organizations acting in disaster, the VOADs, those are the national, larger scale organizations that might not be here locally or not the local chapter, but they come in force and they hit the ground running to go help people. But it's really the EOC that says, hey, thank you for coming in to help. Here's where the hardest hit areas are. Here's the gaps in services. Here are the needs in the community. And so we point them in a direction and they're going to go do what they're going to do. And that's help people. But it's so much more streamlined. It's so much more efficient if they know where to go and how to help.
Yeah, and there was an organization that a few years back, driving through my neighborhood, and it was Cajun Navy.
Yeah.
And Cajun Navy, I was outside and got to meet them. And so I brought them right into the house, right into the studio, and put them on the air because of what they do. And they're all over the world. They're just not here. They're everywhere. And they are an amazing group of people who really were stepping up when our community was in dire need. And we didn't make that phone call. They just showed up. And there's a lot of nonprofit organizations that do just that, correct?
There are a lot of nonprofit organizations that do that. But if we know that they're there and we can then lump them into our framework and set them forth and to basically guide them on where they need to go, it makes their job better and easier. It makes our job better and easier. Because if the Cajun Navy is out there with boats and they rescue somebody from their home, they're just called 911. We don't have to send fire rescue out to that same home. Right. They can go somewhere else and save somebody else because we know now that Cajun Navy's already been there. And that's essentially what we did in the EOC, is we were keeping track of all of those organizations, where they were going, and made sure that fire rescue and PD, Public Works already knew who was going where, so it could be as efficient as possible.
You know, it's funny how this conversation started out a little bubble, and the bubble just kept getting bigger. All right, I'm glad we went down this road. We don't get to talk about how big of an effort this is, because once you're in the EOC, it's your own little world, and you're kind of locked into that. Not that you're locked into it by itself, but you just don't know the value in what you guys, and I know you do, but I don't think the citizens do on what you guys are coordinating. This is not just a rough shot of what we want to do. You guys really work hard at trying to structure this and come up with different solutions and communications and all those things. Can you highlight what effort you guys put into doing that, and how you stay in contact with a lot of these organizations?
Oh, yeah, so we start with a FEMA framework, and I say start with. So we use something called the National Incident Management System. It's FEMA's entirely federal system that says that everybody, every government, every community organization needs to respond to a disaster in the same way. So that if you go to Northport, then if you go to Sarasota County, then you go to Alaska and Texas, everybody's using the same framework. That's our starting point. So we lay out, it's almost like a chain of command, like in a military situation, where you have people in particular positions that very much report up in a structure. So we do a hierarchy like a military reporting structure that we set up in the EOC. And the roles that we use, they are based upon that FEMA framework, the incident command system. And it's not the roles that we do necessarily day to day. So the role of EOC manager that I have and Stacy has is different than day to day as the deputy emergency manager or emergency manager. At this point in time, we receive essentially a delegation of authority from the city manager specifically for the EOC actions that we're able to guide and basically coordinate that entire room, where the fire chief's reporting to Stacy or myself, the police chief's reporting to Stacy or myself, essentially for the actions of support that the city is doing, that the EOC is doing, it functions through that chain of command structure. And that's just for that EOC activation. But we have people from all departments across the entire city brought in, now working in roles that aren't their day to day. And we have our entire city basically that's been activated. Every single city employee we consider an emergency responder. It doesn't matter if you're in Parks and Recreation,
Right.
or if you're in utilities, or if you're in finance, or if you're fire rescue or PD. Everybody in the city is an emergency responder that we put to work in some way or the other. We use that structure to basically give everybody a role, and now they're essentially working in a disaster capability that may or may not be completely different than their day-to-day job. Our job in emergency management is to train everybody ahead of time so that we're not throwing everybody into roles that isn't their day-to-day job with no training, no experience, basically no knowledge. So that's what we do during the year, is to train people and do practice runs, which we call exercises, so that when a disaster does happen, if we have a Milton, a Helene, a large scale fire, that we can flip that switch, bring people in, put them in their disaster roles, and immediately get to work.
We've got some really big changes coming, that we didn't have to deal with a few years back with, repayment structures and different things like that. The FEMA is going to now implement in. That's going to change a lot of things on the cleanup and projections there, and how things happen. But overall, um, this this machine that I call the EOC, because it is independent of a lot of things, because of how things are handled. There's a specific order that's given out, and you guys are running with it. There's a huge amount of responsibility that comes with that, and all the players. I think that's why I have so much respect for what I saw, is that I didn't see any of the spokes of the wheel not working together. Every spoke was just lockstep. Everything was just working. And when you see it in action, there's so much pride that I have for what you guys do, that I just brag about you guys all the time, because the citizens need to hear it. And sorry if you think I'm a city fan. I actually am. I can't help myself. I love where I live. I love what we do. I love what I see, and and what you guys carry is a lot of pride. And I don't see anybody in that room that doesn't have the same thing.
I agree with you, and I'm glad that you got to see kind of the actual EOC activation. It's my job as emergency or deputy emergency manager, and Stacy's job. We have an expectation that if we activate, we're going to be working long hours. We're going to be going until the job gets done. So I know going into it that in an EOC activation, I'm probably working 20-hour days until the EOC at least ramps down to a partial activation. But we bring in people from across our entire city, from various different departments, and put them in sometime in different roles than they're used to. And they need to be away from their family.
Yep.
They need to be in the city hall building, which is not meant for as an EOC, working around the clock, sleeping on the floor, because we're sleeping on the floor in conference rooms or offices. There's no beds or bunks in city hall. Worrying about their family and their home. Meanwhile, they're working at least 12-hour days, but probably closer to 16 to 18, around the clock, doing high level in whatever needs to be coordinated and done to get the mission accomplished in the EOC, and doing it with a smile on their face, ready to step up and do whatever they need to, because at the end of the day, I think a lot of us everybody really gets into this job for public service. And this is the epitome of public service, is serving in the EOC or serving in a disaster capability where we're literally saving lives.
Well, and Sean, yeah, I agree. Well, you guys do a great job. Sean, I'm going to shorten his question up, but how does the communications work with you guys when you're announcing the EOC is opening? How are you structuring that? And are we partnering with other stations, other TV stations and radio stations to get that word out?
So just a quick clarification. When you're talking about the EOC's opening, you're talking about to the public, not to our responders, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So part of that chain of command structure, we have a part of it called the Public Information Officer, and that is led by our communications team. So that's Jason Bartolone and Madison Ingalls. They're the A shift and B shift Public Information Officer, but they do the outreach to all of the local media. They stand up something called the Joint Information Center. So it's another EOC adjacent structure. We have it in City Hall alongside our EOC. They're basically taking in as much information as possible. So that's getting information from the public through social media, from phone calls we're receiving, and then pushing out all of our emergency alerts to the public in every way possible. Part of that's contacting media sources so that we can send our emergency alerts and emergency information through news media. It's using our mass notification system to do the alerts to everybody's phones and to the radio for life-saving information like evacuation notices, that kind of thing. When we're doing disaster information, we try to blast out information in as many ways as possible to make sure that it reaches as many people as possible. Because we know that as cell service goes out, as power goes out, as internet goes out, it's harder and harder for people to receive information. So whether it be through media, whether it be through social media, whether it be through radio, whether it be through any means possible, we want to get life-saving information out.
We still have the alert on our cell phones that they can sign up for too.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. So that is.
Go ahead.
Yep. So that's through a program called alertsarasotacounty.com. And I definitely want to push that. It's a countywide program, but when you sign up specifically, you can sign up for Northport alerts. So we use the same system that the county does. And it's the same system that Venice uses, same system that the city of Sarasota uses. It's a countywide program. But we can specifically send alerts to Northport specific information, as opposed to countywide information like the evacuation orders. We don't spam people through it. It's truly only used for life-saving information.
And so I'm going to go a little bit deeper on the county side of things, because what I learned through all these years of doing this is that we don't recreate the wheel. We actually work within the structure of the county, which keeps us, I think, in lockstep with them a lot of times, because we're not, I think, redesigning what's already there. We're working well within the scope of what they've designed, but then we also assess our own community at the same time, correct?
That's entirely correct. And it starts day to day. I'm going to call them blue skies, gray skies. That's our emergency management term. Blue skies being, day to day, gray skies being cloudy, storm, such and such. So if I say the terms, that's what they mean. But in blue skies, we do our planning elements. It starts with, we have a citywide emergency management plan. How does our city respond to emergencies? And when we write that, and it's updated every 4 years, we write it alongside Sarasota County, who does their countywide plan. But our city plan is specific to how does the city manage emergencies, but it's just written in a way that it works together with the county's plan instead of against. Same thing with the county and the state. So we all do things similarly, but we also make sure that it's tailored to Northport's specific needs.
We're having some hot weather. The Gulf is already way too hot for my comfort level. I'd like it to be 76 degrees or a lot cooler than that. 63 would be great. It's not going to be that cool. I think we're probably sitting at about 84, 85.
Probably more than that even. Yeah.
It's scary because this time of year, it doesn't take much of a storm to come through and get woke up. We're talking about heat though. How does this heat wave that we're having and the drought, how does all that play a factor in the EOC and what you guys do there?
Yep. So we assess. So one of the things we do day to day, every single day, doing it right now, is we assess whatever hazards, threats exist in the world. So we are constantly monitoring. We use a numbering system for our EOC. It's an activation level. So we do a 3-2-1 system. 3 is going on right now. It is constant monitoring of what's going on in the world. That's weather, that's man-made threats, et cetera, et cetera. We're constantly have eyes and ears out as to what's going on. 2 is the partial activation, where we start bringing some people in, but not everybody. 1 being everybody is activated in the EOC, and we're probably going 24 hours a day. So right now we're 3. So we're working with the National Weather Service. We get constant weather briefings from the Weather Service on what is rain, everything from rain chances to drought outlook to heat to wind, all above and beyond. And what we're seeing right now is it started through this past dry season. It was a La Nina dry season. And so we did not get a really too much of any rain through the dry season, which is what's responsible for the drought that's going on right now. We are starting to get rain, but it is still areas of severe to extreme drought throughout the city of Northport and Sarasota County. So we're looking at what the impacts are for drought, as far as water quality goes, as far as providing water goes. We're looking at agricultural impacts of drought and really the projection of continued drought into the dry season and what that would look like and the impacts to the city. Also, on the other hand, is heat. So just it is summer. It is going to be hot. We understand that every time we put information out about heat, we don't want people, if we're putting information out about heat, it's because it is extreme or abnormal heat. And we use the Weather Service categorization of that. They use something called heat risk, which is how bad is the heat when looking at your individual area. So we look at heat risk, which is how above normal is the heat in the city of Northport compared to normal at this time, and what are the potential impacts for heat-related illnesses, heat exhaustion, heat cramps, and heat stroke. What is the likelihood and severity of that, and who would be susceptible to heat-related illnesses?
Awesome. So I'm a quick question with Sean again. Sean works in the home health industry, so a lot of the patients are at home. Do we already know where the medical shelter would be for those types of people to go to in Northport?
So the individuals with special medical needs?
Yes.
Yeah, so the special medical needs shelter is run by the county in partnership with the state's Department of Health. And those individuals would have to register through Sarasota County's Special Medical Needs Program. And I would encourage anybody with special medical needs, which is really individuals that are electrically dependent or with those access functional needs, so to register now through that. And there is the designated location. I think there are 2 locations within the county. Lamarck Elementary is still their primary. However, it is only for individuals that are on that roster that can go to that location. So you would need to sign up ahead of time through Sarasota County Special Medical Needs roster and then have them on the list for them to go to that location. The county also has the ability to choose which shelters that they open in coordination with FDOH. So again, I would never encourage somebody to just show up there without registering for the list. And they will actually do call outs to everybody on that list. If you're already registered, they will call out to you and say, hey, do you need to come to this shelter or do you have your own accommodations? If you need to come to the shelter, do you have the ability to transport yourself there, or can we accommodate through Breeze to get you to that special medical needs shelter?
And really, I would highly suggest that, because I know that prior to serving in the EOC, I actually was over at the high school, and for the other hurricane that we got hit with, and the shelter that we were there for, I actually helped run the gym. My wife ran the dog shelter, dog, cat, and oh my gosh, every other known animal to man. We're all in the boys and girls locker room, in the shower stalls, in bathrooms, which is unbelievable when you see it happen. I still can't believe how it all came together, because there's no true practice for that in those shelter situations. So you're counting on a lot of people at a high school who are organized on their daily basis, but prepared to handle something like that. I would give them a B plus. I don't think you could go to an A, only because at the level that they were trained and ready for, they were beyond belief. If you were to grade them, now that they've been through it, the next time they're going to be an A, because they've been through it before and they saw what happened. Um, I just our community has been through a lot, and I think we take it for granted. I truly do. I think there are a lot of citizens that it doesn't affect them, so they don't pay attention to it. But the people who were coming to that shelter, there were healthcare needs. Sorry, there were, and I don't think they knew back then how to register. I'm glad we're talking about it today, and thank you, Sean, for doing that. These types of conversations to the community. That's why Mike comes on. That's why Stacy comes on. That's why Chief Titus is on. Chief Morales. We talk about all these things because they affect everything within our city, and how it functions. And uh, Mike, you guys do an amazing job. I can't commend you enough on what you guys do, because the end result of this is we're trying to prevent loss of life and keep everybody as safe as possible. And I don't know that we've lost anybody through these situations. It might be through stress, but when it comes right down to these hurricane situations, I think we've done an outstanding job. But what do you think? I mean, and how have you assessed that as an organization?
So we, so I came in after Ian. I went through Ian in Lee County, which was a different
Well,
beast in and of itself.
so
But when I came in, we were going through the after action process after Ian here. And it is a night and day difference with the framework and makeup, even since Ian, of learning where our gaps are and how do we close those gaps? How do we make things
I
better?
love it.
How do we train more? How do we exercise more so
Yep.
that if we needed to activate today or tomorrow, would we be ready? And I think that we're in a really good place.
You talk and I get goosebumps. I watched, and I am so proud that I served those two with you guys. Because I can definitely be a spokesman for you guys anywhere, at any moment, and I am. Um, what I saw and what I watched you guys do post. You're not happy unless you're fixing it. And it is an ever moving piece that doesn't have a true fix to it, because not every situation is the same. So that playbook, our Parks and Rec has a great playbook, but sorry, the playbook for what you guys do, it there isn't a big enough book, because you have to adapt to everything that comes in the door, because it may not be the same twice. Um,
Correct. No,
Go ahead.
and that, yeah. So no storm is ever going to be the same. No two disasters are ever going to be the same. No two responses are ever going to be the same. And that's something that I want our citizens to know and understand too. That every time that I hear, oh, well, we were fine during Ian, so we'll be good in the future. Every storm is different, every disaster is different. And that's why we preach preparedness so that no matter what the thing that faces you or our community, to be as prepared as possible.
You know, let's go back to Sean's situation here for a second. If people are on meds, what should they do? We're talking about coming to a shelter. We're talking about being locked down, maybe 30 days. You just don't know. Um, Preparedness with your physician now, and with your pharmacy now, does prevent a lot of bad situations maybe from escalating. How would you suggest that citizens prepare for the medication side of things now, so that if something were to happen, they could get some extra meds, and there's got to be a way around that, I'm sure.
There is, and so part of stocking a disaster supply kit ahead of time is to stock up on things like medication, but also shelf stable food, water, everything that you would need for at least 3 days. We're encouraging 7, But I would also at the same time say that after a storm or other disaster, there is some degree of lessening on things like prescription requirements as far as scripts go. And there's a little bit more ability for, say, EMS to assist with updating of scripts and pharmacy refills. But I would never encourage somebody to necessarily rely on that. The more preparedness ahead of time you can do on having the food, the water, the prescription, pet food, everything stocked, having that family plan in place ahead of time so that you know if my household, if we have to evacuate, where it is that we're going, if you know if even your car is fueled up and kept at half a tank so that you didn't need to fight through lines at the gas tank on empty. All those things make your life a whole lot stressful in the event that you actually need them, and it makes the community that much more prepared.
Well, and I'll say this too. If you're going to a shelter, be prepared. They're not really supposed to feed you. That isn't part of their guideline. So have your peanut butter jelly stacked and your power bars. And I would suggest getting some meal replacements and MREs and type things like that you can fix on the fly. There isn't a lot of microwave availability when there's no electricity. There's no hot water. You're in a gym or a classroom with hundreds of people, if not at least 100. Um, and you never know who your roommate is going to be. And I'm not saying don't go. I'm saying we went because we saw that fear factor on what we were facing that day. And I'm the normal guy who stays at home. Now that I've been through it at a shelter, and now that I've been in the EOC and I've watched, I think we all need to have the responsibility of talking to our neighbors, uh, making them feel rest assured that the safest place for them to be is probably not in their 1969 trailer. Go to a shelter. Trailers flatten really fast in a storm, and it doesn't take much. We've seen that at our trailer parks, and we didn't get a direct hit, and we still see to this day the shreds of fiberglass insulation up and down the roads, and you can see it. It's still there. So keep that in mind as you're talking to your neighbors, as you're checking on them. Build those relationships with them so that they understand it. It's okay to go to a shelter. That you do get to come home, but it's a good, safe environment. You've got at least the bathroom. You've got other people that are there too. If you need some help, they're there. But pack wisely. Pack some power bars and stock up in that regard. So you're grabbing one bag, and you've got enough food and supplies to get you through. And I anything you want to add on that, Mike?
Yeah, a couple things there. And so when we talk evacuations, I think people's first thought are that if we say evacuations or an evacuation order is issued, it means that you need to leave the state or go to the other coast or go to the evacuation centers. And when we talk evacuations, the first thing that we'd encourage is to evacuate tens of miles, not hundreds of miles. So if you have somebody that lives further away from the coast in a further evacuation zone, so a DE evacuation zone in a well-built house that is elevated, that you go stay with them first and foremost. You'll be a whole lot more comfortable. The evacuation centers are there because they're a safe place to be, and that's it. So it is a safe place to be in a safe building. You have a 20 square foot space on the floor that's carved out for you, and that is it. That is all that is required for an evacuation center. Going above and beyond that is the goal to try and get things like water and food for the shelterees, but that is not guaranteed. And so the most important thing is that the evacuation center is there to be a safe place out of the storm. But if you can find a place that is a family or friend's house that is a safer location, we would encourage that to be your first plan.
And I'm going to add something in. Um, Respect where you're going. Show the respect for the building you're going to. Uh, we I I can tell you we saw great people, and we saw people who just didn't respect where they were going. And you're all in a different environment. You're all full of stress. Um, Please try to take that in consideration when you're with your other citizens. The utmost respect given is well received, and I'll just tell you, it's appreciated by the people who are giving that building usage out. Because that the high school had to be converted back into a high school to be taught at, and that the deep cleaning that has to go through after a hurricane event is it's an undertaking that I don't think people really understood. And I saw it again firsthand. So the stress levels that go into what you guys do, what goes into a shelter being run, um, we all need to have a responsibility to do the right thing and to pay attention to our surroundings and keep ourselves safe. But we also need to keep in consideration the respect that we must start garnering for where we're going in those situations. So I just wanted to add that in, Mike.
Yeah, as somebody who managed a shelter in the previous experience that I had before coming to the city, that is also librarians and Parks and Recreation employees and other and school staff that this is not their full-time gig. They're also being asked to work in a shelter and be away from their families. So they're doing their best.
Well, I got to tell you that the one thing that we're talking here um, is being away from your family. I my wife was at home by herself during the last two because I was in the OC, so I got to experience that side of it too. So there's a huge stress factor that comes in to want to be in both places. I know because I did it. You guys are taken for granted on that, and I'm going to say that to every citizen. So, as much as we want to thank our firefighters and our police officers when we see them, the people who do the OC and they're part of that emergency management team. That those are our first responders. You guys are our first responders. And I want to truly commend you for being part of that, and I'm glad you're there. I'm glad the team is there. I have the utmost respect for the team, and I'm not a Michigan fan, but the team. It has something to. There's something to be said about that. And I think you guys have you've got a lot of wind behind your sail, and I can't wait to see where it goes. I see a lot of greatness coming with the new AOC. Are you as excited about that as I think you are?
Yes, probably more so.
Yeah. So we've got maybe 2 minutes left. Can you give an overview of what the new building is going to mean for you guys as a core group, as a core team?
Yep. Yeah. So first and foremost, it is a safe place to be for us to coordinate disaster response. It is a resilient building that's going to be able to support 24/7 operations, and hurricanes don't necessarily care if it's nighttime or daytime, if it's weekend, if it's a holiday. We have people that are working in there for response around the board. So this will at least have a place to work safely and live safely so that we're not taking over people's offices and sleeping on the floor, so that as they're away from their families, it's a safe place to be with at least some degree of function around the board, around for everything that we need for life and to facilitate as effective of a response as possible. It's got the equipment necessary to be as streamlined as efficient as possible for our response. And it's a redundant building. So we have the power, we have the water, we have the communications necessary to make sure that everything stays online no matter what's going on, so we can continue to make that response and those life-saving efforts as efficient and as effective as possible.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to come on and really educate. I think a nice in-depth overview of what happened. So if and I knock on all kinds of wood here because I don't want any hurricanes, but if we were to have one, we're in great hands with you guys. So, um, I, I don't look forward to working with you in that situation, but I do, because I know the team and you guys are great at what you do. So, kudos to you guys.
Thank you, John. I appreciate the conversation, and I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You guys enjoy your the rest of your week. I'll be back on next Monday. Guys, is it the first Monday of the month? If it is, it's police are back on. And then we got fire, and then commission comes around, and then right back to another uh, episode with another department within the city of Northport. So you guys enjoy your week and be safe out there, and slow down on 75. You can still get there under 75 miles an hour. So thanks. Have a good day. Thanks, Mike.
Bye.